What's up, guys? This is Cycasto coming to you from my house. We're just doing this. So, a way that say, even in the midst of all this craziness, it can't stop us from doing ministry. We'll have to do it digitally from here on out. So, I'm going to be trying to post a video at least once a week for actually you and your parents to go through with the lesson, same as we'd go through with Refuge, but just a little shorter, compacted, and we'll get going. But just before we do that, let me give you a couple announcements. We're getting our social media game back on. So that means get your remind going. That's how we'll text you updates and stuff for the future. You're going to text at Parkway H to 81010. So that's text at Parkway H to 81010. And also, if you've got your Instagram, find us at PHSM Students. Twitter, PH Students. So, also, if you know what Zoom is, I need you to download that app. Download Zoom app, and we're going to try to connect for that digitally and do it's like a video call for conferencing. We can have a whole student ministry together at one point. But with that being said, let's dig into John chapter 13, verses 1 through 20. So, if you have this right now, you can go ahead and pause this video. I want you to go get your Bibles, get John chapter 13, verses 1 through 20. Pause the video and you can read that right now. Alright, but we'll get going. Hey, so if you remember last time we did this, we were in John chapter 12, and Jesus had just come into Jerusalem riding on a colt, the foal of a donkey, and he was basically declaring that he is the king of Israel. And so he has just come into Israel. He's doing that right now in John chapter 13. The context is this: he's about to have his last meal, the last supper, with his disciples. Is the Passover meal. And if you remember what the Passover is, it's when the Jews celebrate how God delivered Israel from Egypt when they were in captivity there. And the way that would happen is God would kill the firstborn of all the Egyptians, but he would pass over the doors, the families who had the blood of the Lamb on their doors. And so that's what Jesus is entering into now. He knows that he is actually the new sacrificial lamb that will give his blood, that God will, whoever receives Jesus, God will pass over those people and his wrath will not be distributed to them. So Jesus knows that this is actually about to happen to him, and he's having his last meal with his disciples. In chapter 13, Jesus washes his disciples' feet. He tells them to do likewise, and then at the end of the chapter, he then says, I give you a new commandment to love one another. And so you do this so that the whole world will know that you are my disciples. So let's dig in. First thing we see is the whole point of what we're about to talk about, actually, before we get into the first point, is that we see that from this message, where we're going to say today is that we are called to love and serve one another as Jesus has served us, with Jesus as our example. So, first thing, and there's some logical steps on how I got there that we're going to go through today, is first is we have a need to have a share with Jesus. So if you take a look at verses 8 through 9, chapter 13, verses 8 through 9, it says, Peter said to him, You shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, If I do not wash you, you have no share with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. So you've got this instance, Jesus coming down, about to wash Peter's feet, and Peter's like, whoa, no, you're my teacher, you're my Lord. You don't need to be washing my feet. Don't do that, Jesus. And Jesus says, this statement, if you don't let me wash you, you don't have any share with me. And then Peter freaks out in classic Peter fashion and says, well, okay, then you just wash all of me, wash my hands, wash my head, wash everything. Jesus, I want to be a part of you. And Jesus is like, whoa, just calm down. It's okay. But the point being is Peter has this desire and this need to have a share with Jesus. And we actually all have that need also. Now, granted, these disciples, they already have a presupposition, a belief that Jesus is the King in the way, the truth, the life to God. He's the only way that they can get to God and get to heaven, that life is in Jesus. So they already have this notion. You and I may have that, we may not. If you're not there yet, that's okay. Just go with me there for right now for this message, with this idea that Jesus is the only way to life. And if that is true, then we have a need to share with him in that life, to be with him. And the next point is we have to be washed by Jesus to have a share in him. Jesus says in verse 8, he says, if I do not wash you, you have no share with me. In other words, for us to receive Jesus, we have to accept his washing. And that's not just washing our feet, but that's him cleansing us by receiving who he is, by what he's done on the cross, which we're going to get to later. But letting him completely take over and wash our whole being with himself. And when he does that for us, he cleanses us, purifies us, and we get to be a part of him. And we see that in order to have any share with him, we have to let that happen first. The next thing we see in this passage is we are called to love and serve each other as Jesus has loved us. Let me go ahead and read to you all of verses 12 through 17. It says, when he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that you also should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. So we're actually going to focus on verses 14 through 15 here, and it says, again, if I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. So Jesus is their master, their rabbi, their teacher. And he's not only that, but he is God incarnate in human form. And what that means is Jesus has humbled himself from heaven, coming down to earth, but not just that, but washing his disciples' feet. The feet are the dirtiest part of the body at this time. I mean, think about this. You're wearing sandals. All these people are wearing sandals and they're walking around in the dirt and sand, if you've ever done that on the beach. And that's their daily life, very fine dirt. You've literally got layers and layers and layers of dirt caked onto your feet. And you usually have a basin or water because your feet are so dirty as you come into a house to wash your feet before you go into dinner. And Jesus, the person who ranks highest above among them all, gets down on his feet and gets a washcloth and starts scrubbing their feet, the dirtiest part of them. And in this kind of prostrate form between them, you're like, wow, this is this weird position. My master is literally at my feet and washing my feet. And Jesus says, if I, your Lord and teacher, who you profess as those things, do this for you, shouldn't you be able to do this to others? Shouldn't you love others even more than this? If I'm doing this, or shouldn't you? What's holding you back? Humble yourselves to get down and serve and love other people the way I'm serving and loving you. So that's the point that he's made to us there. The next point is this, is the world will know that we are of Jesus by our love and service to one another. So we haven't read this yet, and you haven't read it. But at the end of the chapter, in verses 34 through 35, it says this, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. So in other words, Jesus is getting at the whole reason why he wants us to love each other so well. It's because so that other people will see you loving each other. The disciples of Jesus loving each other and serving each other well, that when they see that, they actually see Jesus. They can point out that, wow, they are different than the rest of the world. What is it? And it's because they will know the difference is that you are Jesus's disciples. And so that's why Jesus wants us to love and serve each other, so that we are different, so that we show others actually his love for us demonstrated in us, which actually means his love for them. And that leads to this next point that says, whoever receives those of Jesus receives Jesus, and therefore God in his Trinitarian being, God the Father, who sent Jesus. In verse 20, it says, truly, truly, I say to you, whoever receives the one I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me. In other words, if you are washed by Jesus, here's the logical train of events. You're washed by Jesus. You're of Jesus. You love one another. People see you loving one another. And if they receive you, how you love one another, and they want part of that, they receiving you actually means they receive Jesus, which means they receive God the Father who sent Jesus. And then the cool thing is that those people are then washed by Jesus, and they start the whole cycle all over again. So just some practicalness is, guys, like this whole point of this is, I guess, that we need to love and serve one another. How do we do that? I think there's some key examples that are key to our culture right now, especially students. First one is through our words. I've seen, unfortunately, it's become a thing where it's cool and fun to make fun of yourself or make fun of others. But guys, I have to put this out there, that if your words have the potential to actually put someone down or to degrade them or to make them feel less in any way, I have to say that you should not say those things, and you should be taking really consideration into the words that you put out there, because James in the Bible says your words are a fire to your whole body. They can either give life or tear life down. Quite the opposite, we should use our words to build people up. I had a friend named John in seminary, and you'll figure out I have lots of friends named John, but he was so good at using his words for encouragement. He would just randomly in the dining hall be like, man, Sai, like, I really like that jacket you're wearing today. Or Ben, what you said in class that really touched me and made me think about this in certain way. He would just randomly say nice things to people, and he's just built people up all the time. And that's a way that we can love each other with our words. The next is just through selflessness. Easy example is my brother Kel. When we were kids, like, he'd go out to the garage, he'd be getting a Coke or a Hot Pocket or something, and he'd be like, Sai, do you want something? Do you need anything? I'm going out to the garage. And he didn't need to do that. That was just a cool way of him asking me if I needed something. He was just thinking of me, wanting to serve me, and that made me feel good. I had two friends, Josiah, another guy named John, who I run with. In college and high school, they would stay after the youth group, and they'd clean up the trash and the chip bags, or put up chairs, and do that in college also, and really just help each other. I even had two guys who were my small group leaders at the time. They would make meals for our small group every single week. They wouldn't ask for any money or anything like that, but they'd cook for a bunch of guys, and that was so cool. Also in college, I lived with 10 other guys, 10 guys including myself, and we had one house, 6 bedrooms, 1 kitchen, and this thing really stuck out to me. So that means there were a lot of dishes that never got done, or that were always out. And so we always argued about who does dishes, when should they put up, the kitchen dirty, and we kept putting like rotations, chore schedules, and all this. But eventually, finally, one guy named Clifton just finally stood up and said, guys, like, just stinking love each other. If you see dishes out, no matter if they're yours or someone else's, just do the dishes, because that's how you love someone else. We can love each other by just doing it. Forget your pride, and do the dishes. So maybe that can help you in your household or whatever. But for whatever reason, that finally clicked with us, and we're like, man, yeah, we haven't been loving each other well, so we can do that now. Another thing right now is with the coronavirus, guys, a way to love each other and love this world is actually to practice the social distancing recommended by medical professionals in our government. And the reason is not necessarily because you're concerned for yourself, but it's because you're concerned for others. So like we, if being young, may have good immune systems, may not be affected by a coronavirus as much. However, we can still carry the disease and transmit it to other people. And we don't want to overwhelm hospitals. We just want to play our role in society by helping protect the people around us, not spreading not just the disease, but fear. And so those are some really easy ways that we can show love to each other right now. Again, guys, the conclusion of all this is the whole point of loving and serving each other is because when we do this, we are actually being examples of Jesus. Jesus has committed the ultimate act of love and service to us all when he died for us on the cross. Jesus, the King of Kings, God himself, died in order to restore our relation to him, which was severed from our own selfish desires and selfish ambition, rebellious desires in our heart. He washes us clean with his blood By him dying, he has purified us through the blood that he has shed, so that we may receive a life and a share with him in all eternity in the kingdom of heaven. That's what he's given us. So when we love, so that others might see Jesus' love. And if you have not seen a reason to love others so far, like yet in your life, then I ask you just to look at what Jesus has done for you, that you receive his love and his washing, and that you start loving others so that they might also see his love. Amen. Okay, that was it, guys. I just have a couple of discussion questions for you. You can go through with your parents or each other. First is just, what was the main point of the sermon? And what were some key takeaways or interesting points that stood out to you? Second is, what do you guys think? What was the main point that Jesus was communicating to his disciples in this passage? Please explain the chain of events that Jesus did that led up to his main point, what he was trying to communicate. Next question is, why should we love others? How can we love and serve others? Some application in your own life. And then really just key in on, how did Jesus commit the ultimate act of love, service, and washing for us? All right, guys, that's it. Just a couple more things. Don't forget, Beach Camp is still happening this summer. Mission Trip is still happening. We'll keep you updated if anything occurs or anything gets canceled. But as of now, it's still good to go. So keep signing up, and we'll catch you guys later. Bye.